Some more tariff developments out of the White House this morning because US President Donald Trump says he's now considering pressing pause on those tariffs that he imposed on the auto industry, which will give American car makers time to set up manufacturing capabilities and adjust their supply chains. That doesn't happen quickly. Let's go to the Chief Investment Officer at the Motley Fool, as we always do on a Tuesday morning, Scott Phillips. Good morning. So, look, another U-turn here, it seems, on this front.
Yeah, Pete, nice car analogy too, by the way. That's exactly what they are doing, another U-turn. It was consumer electronics yesterday, autos today. Here's the thing, mate, this is not a surprise, right? It wasn't like a week ago the US administration thought that somehow the auto industry could turn itself around on a dime and suddenly start making really, really complex integrated car parts and final vehicles in the US just because Donald Trump decided they should. So it was always going to be problematic. How the administration didn't know that or didn't allow for that is an open question. But yeah, that's exactly right. This thing's looking like Swiss cheese down. There's holes for everything. There already were, by the way, some concessions across the the Canada-Mexico border from the US when it came to some of these things. This is an extension of that. The big question for the automakers, though, remains, why do you bring your supply chains to the US and incur higher costs, putting prices up for your domestic consumers when it makes you less competitive against any imports if and when tariffs fall, and you can't export those cars successfully or competitively because you've got a higher cost base than your overseas competitors. So it remains a really, really difficult economic challenge for the car makers. They are caught absolutely in the middle of this one through no fault of their own. This is what Donald Trump's decided he wants to do. It's part of his core MAGA platform, particularly for the US, for Middle America, for the Midwest in particular. This is what he said he was going to do. The problem is the impacts are being felt right across the board. The pause is a good idea if you're going to go ahead with the tariffs at least. It's going to take years, though. This is not, again, the complexity of these things, building the facilities, building the manufacturing plants, testing the production lines, getting them up to scale and up to speed.
Supply
it's going to take years. So, any meaningful pause is going to have to be years long. Whether Donald Trump has the patience for that, the approach he wants to take on that, and what it does to inflation and car prices in the meantime is anyone's guess.
So, I mean, look, long term here, whether it's the next 3 months or whether it's the year or two, I mean, where does all of this ultimately end up? Is it just, a whole bunch of countries just end up paying a little more tax? Is that, and if that happens, I suppose Trump can still claim a win.
Well, that's the problem, right? So we don't yet know. It's likely this pushes up the price of cars for US consumers. Why? Because imported cars are more expensive, and locally produced cars cost more to produce than the imports would have otherwise cost. We know that because otherwise the tariffs aren't required, right? So that's exactly what's going on. So US consumers end up paying more. The question really is whether or not there are ongoing imports into the US at any size or scale. Now, the reduced 10% tariffs for now make, for example, Japanese or European produced cars a little bit less expensive than they would have been otherwise, but still more expensive than they were. If and when those tariffs go back up for those countries, it increases the price yet again. And so you do end up having effectively an inefficient and uncompetitive US auto industry making almost only for local markets because the prices simply go up too high. Think about some of the exports, the large, the Ford F-150s and the Dodge Rams and that kind of stuff. Imagine adding meaningful amounts of cost to those and try and get those into Australia at even higher prices. It gets ugly. To your point, though, it depends on what other countries do in retaliation. Australia at the moment, for example, not going to retaliate if other countries don't either. They simply will trade amongst themselves for cheaper vehicles. The Americans stuck buying more expensive ones.
All right. Good to see you as always, Scott. We'll chat again next week.